Dawn didn't break that morning, it tore open. Something moved through the silence of the savannah that wasn't supposed to exist, and a man who'd spent his life protecting nature suddenly realized it was nature protecting him. The truth he found that day turned duty into destiny. Like the story, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments what you think he discovered and where you're watching from. The first light of dawn crept across the red earth of Kinjaro Reserve, painting the acacia trees gold. Inside a weathered ranger outpost miles from any village, Harlan Pierce, a black ranger with the quiet bearing of a man who'd seen both war and wilderness, stirred from sleep to the sound of frantic scratching at his door. It was not the gentle scratch of an animal begging for food. It was wild, desperate. A pounding rhythm that carried fear in every strike. Harlan sat up fast, his heart kicking hard against his ribs. For 12 years he had lived alone on this stretch of African savanna, and nothing, not elephants, not poachers, not even the storms that could rip a roof away, had ever made a sound quite like this. He rose, boots thudding softly on the wooden floor, hand brushing the sidearm hanging from a nail near his bed. Easy now, he muttered half to himself. When he opened the heavy door, the morning light poured in, and there, standing on the porch, was a small dog caked in mud, trembling from head to tail. Its fur was mottled tan and white, its chest rising and falling in rapid bursts. The pup looked up at him, eyes wide, filled with something Harlan had learned to recognize long ago, terror mixed with hope. "Where'd you come from, little one?" he whispered. The pup took one step closer, then without warning grabbed the cuff of his pant leg in its teeth and yanked hard. Harlan froze. It wasn't an attack. The motion was deliberate, an urgent plea to follow. The dog whined sharply, then pulled again, jerking its head toward the open savanna. Twist one had already begun. Hold on, Harlan said, lowering his voice. He crouched, scanning the small body, the mud-streaked paws, the uneven breathing, the deep scratch along its flank that looked fresh. That's when he saw the collar, old cracked leather darkened by sweat and rain, stamped with a faint emblem, the same insignia as Kinjaro Reserve, the park he patrolled. But this dog wasn't part of any registered pack or training program he knew of. And below the insignia were faded letters Unit 14. His pulse quickened. Unit 14 had been shut down years ago after a failed rescue left 2 rangers dead, one of them Harlan's mentor. He had buried the last of those dogs himself, yet here was one standing in front of him alive, breathing, and begging him to move. "You've got to be kidding me," he whispered. The dog barked once, sharp and commanding. Instinct won out over logic. Harlan grabbed his field jacket, slung his radio over his shoulder, and whistled once, a long descending tone. From behind the cabin, his old shepherd Odin limped into view. Gray around the muzzle scars tracing his flank, Odin was more than a partner. He was Harlan's only family out here. The older dog approached the pup, cautiously sniffing it from nose to tail. Whatever message passed between them was clear enough. Odin gave a low rumble of acknowledgement, then looked up at Harlan, tail still. Permission granted. "All right," Harlan said, slipping his revolver into his belt. "Lead the way." The pup barked once more and bounded off the porch, pausing just long enough to ensure Harlan followed. The air outside was heavy with humidity, the kind that hinted at last night's storm still lingering underground. Harlan's boots sank slightly into the softened dirt as he followed the trail toward the acacia line. Odin padded silently beside him, nostrils flaring. A line of drag marks cut through the wet grass, leading straight into the mist. It wasn't a poacher's trail. There were no boot prints, no tire treads. It looked like something heavy had been pulled, scraping the earth in uneven grooves. A bad sign. Halfway across the plain, Harlan tried the radio. "Pierce to Station B, come in." Only static. He adjusted the frequency. Nothing. The signal usually carried fine this close to the ridge, but now it was dead silent. That unsettled him more than the marks on the ground. Odin's ears twitched. The pup stopped suddenly, head low, whining. "What is it?" Harlan whispered. That's when he heard it, a low, distant roar muffled by distance but deep enough to vibrate in his chest. It wasn't thunder, it was alive. Odin's stiffened hackles rising, and Harlan knew exactly what that sound belonged to a lion old and angry. He scanned the horizon, but the tall grass and morning haze swallowed everything beyond 30 yards. The pup whimpered, looking back at him as if pleading for courage. Harlan clenched his jaw. All right, kid, he said softly. You got me this far. Let's finish it. They pressed on. The mist thinned near the acacia grove, and the smell of damp earth grew stronger. The trail curved sharply around a cluster of rocks, and in the silence that followed, Harlan felt something shift inside him. A creeping recognition that this wasn't just about an animal in danger. The morning light had barely lifted when the tall grass began to thin, revealing the distant glint of the metal boundary signs ahead. Harlan slowed his breath steady, but his pulse quickening. He knew this stretch of land well enough to recognize the line they were approaching the edge of the predator zone. A quarantined area reserved for wounded lions and elephants, too unpredictable for human proximity. His boots scuffed against the dry dirt as he crouched, running a calloused hand along the ground. The tracks he'd been following deepened here, the drag marks widening as though whatever had made them was heavier, now more burdened. The little dog turned back, ears pinned, barking twice and pawing the ground insistently. That's enough, Harlan muttered, squinting at the sign ahead. The red letters, rusted by years of sun and rain, still shouted their warning, no entry predator rehab zone. His instinct told him to stop. His training demanded it. Yet the pup kept urging him forward, tail stiff, whole body trembling with urgency. You're leading me to trouble, Kid Harlan said under his breath, but the truth was trouble was already here. The silence had weight now, a living thing pressing on his chest. Odin sniffed the air, low growl rising in his throat. Easy, boy. Harlan's voice was calm, though the tension behind it vibrated like a plucked wire. He switched on his radio again, hoping for a scrap of signal, but the static was unbroken, an endless whisper of isolation. The pup darted ahead, disappearing into the brush for a moment, before returning with a muffled bark. Its paw was bleeding just a small cut, but enough to leave faint drops across the dusty trail. Harlan's eyes followed the blood and caught sight of something new. The soil changed color just beyond the line, turning dark, almost black, as if soaked by something other than rain. He moved closer, and the metallic scent hit him first, fresh blood, thick in the humid air. His gut twisted. Someone or something had been hurt recently. He rested a hand on Odin's neck, feeling the steady rhythm of the old dog's heartbeat beneath the coarse fur. Stay sharp, he whispered. Odin gave a soft, guttural whine, the kind he used only when sensing movement unseen by human eyes. Harlan scanned the tree line, every nerve on fire. Nothing moved except the faint shimmer of heat waves over the tall grass. Then from the east came a distant sound, deep, resonant, and unmistakable. A lion's roar. It rolled across the plain, low and long, shaking the very air. Harlan closed his eyes briefly, every memory of his years in the reserve, returning at once, the charges, the standoffs, the nights spent praying a tranquilizer would take before claws reached flesh. This roar was different. It carried something fractured, a note of pain more than rage. The pup whimpered, then bolted ahead again, crossing beneath the warning sign without hesitation. Damn it, Harlan hissed, grabbing Odin's collar. We're not supposed to... But before he could finish, Odin barked sharply, jerking free from his grip. The shepherd's voice was commanding, urgent, not like the panicked yelps of an untrained dog. It was as though Odin himself was saying, "We have to go." Harlan's jaw tightened. Odin had never disobeyed him in 12 years of service. Never. The fact that he did now broke something in the pattern of fear that held Harlan back. He holstered his weapon, wiped sweat from his brow, and stepped over the line after them. The moment his boots hit the other side, the air seemed to shift. The sounds of insects vanished. The wind stilled, and the savanna ahead looked wrong too, still too gray under the morning light. He moved carefully, keeping low eyes tracing every shadow. The drag marks were clearer here, grooves carved through soft soil, ending somewhere in the thicket ahead. Bits of broken branches, strands of coarse hair, and small patches of dark fur clung to the vegetation. It wasn't lion fur, it was canine. He knew the feel of it immediately. A chill spread through him. Another dog had been here recently, possibly part of a lost pack, maybe even one of Unit 14's lineages. The pup yelped softly, pawing at a pile of disturbed earth near the base of a fallen log. Harlan knelt and brushed aside the dirt. Beneath it lay a rusted metal tag bent discolored, but legible enough to make his breath hitch. 023 Handler Pierce. His name. He stared at it, disbelief locking his muscles. "That's impossible," he whispered. He'd buried 023 himself 10 years ago. He could still see the sand collapsing over the small grave, the broken collar placed above it like a headstone. Odin sniffed the tag, then looked up at him, a deep, mournful sound rumbling from his chest. The pup barked once insistent, as if to say, "Now you understand." But before Harlan could make sense of it, the grass ahead moved. Not the whisper of wind, but deliberate motion. He raised a hand for silence. Odin froze. The pup huddled low. Out from the thicket emerged a lion, not running, not roaring, but limping, its side caked with dried blood. It stopped 20 feet away, watching him through the haze. The massive animal's breathing was labored, chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm. Harlan held his ground. "Easy," he said softly. The lion didn't advance, but its eyes, amber intelligent, shifted towards the pup, then toward him. And in that look, Harlan saw no aggression. The forested part of the predator zone was darker than it should have been for mid-morning, the canopies closing tight like clasped hands, filtering sunlight into trembling lines across the earth. The air smelled thick, heavy with old rain and iron. Harlan Pierce moved quietly, every sense tuned sharp as wire, the low pad of Odin's steps beside him syncing with his own. The pup, small, restless, its tail straight with purpose, trotted just ahead, pausing often to look back, urging them forward with those pleading, soulful eyes. Harlan's fingers brushed the revolver grip at his belt, more out of habit than intent to use it. This wasn't a mission that required bullets. It was something else, instinct recognition, maybe penance. He kept his eyes down, reading the earth like a book. The drag marks deepened, pulling through the mud in uneven strokes, but mixed within them now were faint imprints that froze him mid-step boot prints, small, worn at the heel, too deliberate to belong to poachers who would have hidden their trail better. He crouched and pressed his hand over one. The indent was fresh edges, still moist. "There's someone out here," he murmured under his breath. Odin sniffed beside him, hackles stiffening, then lifted his head, nostrils twitching toward the east. Harlan followed his gaze. The forest in that direction sloped downward into a shallow ravine, the kind that collected runoff from the storms. He didn't like it. Low ground meant poor visibility. "Stay close," he whispered, but the pup darted ahead again, paws silent over the wet leaves. Damn it, Harlan followed every few steps, scanning the canopy for movement. The deeper they went, the quieter the reserve became. Even the insects were gone. Then, faint but unmistakable, a sound cut through the silence, a steady rhythmic tapping. Not random, not natural. Tap, pause, tap, tap. 3 beats, then a pause. The pattern repeated. Harlan froze. That cadence, it was deliberate. He'd heard something like it before in the field back when Unit 14 ran rescue drills. A coded call for help. But no one else should have known that pattern now, not after all these years. He raised a hand, signaling Odin to halt. The pup stopped, 2 ears perked toward the sound. "That's not possible," Harlan muttered. The tapping came again, this time clearer, closer wood, striking stone, methodical. He crouched low, moving between the thick trunks until the brush opened just enough to reveal the ravine below. The sight made his throat tighten. At the bottom half, hidden among the roots and debris, the earth had been disturbed, a deep furrow where something large had been dragged and stopped. The mud was blackened with dried blood, A few torn scraps of dark fabric fluttered from a branch. He knew the pattern of that uniform fabric too well, Ranger issue. "No," he whispered. The pup barked once, snapping his focus. The tapping started again farther down the slope. It wasn't coming from the body or the drag site. It was beyond it. A warning A lure. Harlan's training told him to fall back radio for a team. His heart said otherwise. The pup moved first, scrambling down the embankment, paws skidding in the slick mud. "Odin, stay," Harlan ordered softly, but Odin ignored him and followed. Harlan swore under his breath and descended after them, boots sinking deep with each step. When he reached the bottom, he knelt by the disturbed ground. A faint impression of a human hand was smeared across the soil, fingers outstretched, as if clawing for purchase. "Who were you?" he whispered. The wind shifted, carrying the faint metallic tang of blood again, but now it mixed with something else, something sweet and chemical. Tranquilizer serum. He knew the smell from years of field use. Somewhere nearby, someone had fired or spilled it recently. The pattern of it was familiar, an emergency dose meant for large predators. But there were no darts around, no casing, no weapon. The tapping grew louder, clearer, coming from just ahead. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap. It echoed like someone striking metal against stone. The pup stood rigid, tail pointing straight ahead. Harlan drew his revolver more for readiness than defense and moved slowly toward the sound. The ground rose again into a ridge, rocks jutting from the slope like broken teeth. He climbed, boots sliding on the slick surface, Odin breathing heavily behind him. When they crested the rise, the tapping stopped. Complete silence, then a whisper of movement, something brushed past the trees on the right. Harlan swung his light in that direction, beam cutting through the dim green haze. For a split second, he saw eyes shining back, not a lion's, not any predator he knew, but something else. The eyes blinked, once vanished. Then came a faint thud, like something dropping against the rock. He reached the source of the noise, an old metal tranquilizer dart, bent and blood-stained, lodged into the side of a tree. Fresh impact. Someone had fired it not long ago, maybe within the hour. He turned it in his hand, frowning. The chemical residue still glistened faintly. He pocketed it and looked at Odin. The dog's gaze was locked toward the south ear's flat, low growl vibrating through his chest. The pup barked sharply and began to dig at a small mound near the rock wall. "What is it, boy?" Harlan asked, kneeling beside it. The dirt came up easily. Beneath it was a broken radio earpiece and a piece of torn cloth, the same Ranger fabric, again stained dark with mud and blood. The initials were faint, but legible enough. S.M. Harlan's stomach twisted. Those letters match Sergeant Miles, the field partner from the Unit 14 mission, the one who had vanished during that disastrous rescue a decade earlier. They'd never recovered his body. He felt the air leave his lungs in a shuddering exhale. The pup stopped digging and looked at him as if understanding the weight of what he'd found. Odin moved closer, pressing his head gently against Harlan's arm, grounding him. "Miles," he whispered, "you're part of this, aren't you?" A sudden rustle broke through his thoughts. Something massive moved deeper within the trees, a heavy shuffle followed by the low, ragged exhale of a wounded animal. Odin bristled, lips curling silently. The pup barked twice, quick and nervous. "Stay," Harlan said, voice low but firm. He stood and stepped forward through the trees until he reached a clearing shaped like a shallow bowl. The sight waiting there froze him in place. A wide trail of blood led to the base of a fallen tree, where claw marks scarred the bark in deep vertical gouges. Scattered around were 3 empty tranquilizer casings and an overturned crate labeled Wildlife Transport Division. Whatever had gone wrong here wasn't just natural, it was human. The roar rolled through the trees again, closer this time, echoing like thunder over the ravine. It was raw, powerful, but laced with something broken, pain, maybe grief. Harlan's pulse raced as he moved through the dense undergrowth, following the faint shimmer of movement ahead. Odin stalked beside him, his ears flat, his body tense as a drawn bowstring. The pup stayed low, but determined, darting in short bursts, nose close to the ground, as if locked onto a scent no human could sense. The deeper they went, the heavier the air became, thick with musk and rot, and the sour tang of blood. Harlan pushed through a tangle of thorn branches, his shirt tearing as he broke into a clearing. The light cut through the canopy in long, pale shafts, and at the center of that pale glow stood a lion. It was larger than any Harlan had ever seen in his years patrolling the reserve, a massive male with a thick, matted mane streaked with gray and red dust scars running like maps across his shoulders. One eye was cloudy, the other burned gold like a dying sun. The beast stood rigid, its chest heaving, its head low. Harlan froze his instincts, screaming to back away, but the ranger in him overrode the fear. The lion's stance wasn't predatory. It wasn't hunting. It was guarding. Harlan's gaze dropped to the ground before the lion, and his stomach tightened. Something or someone lay there, half hidden beneath branches and leaves, unmoving. He couldn't see clearly from this distance, but the shape was unmistakably humanoid. His heart lurched. Could it be Miles? He felt a tremor of disbelief, a ghost of hope and dread entwined. The lion let out a deep, rumbling growl that vibrated through the soil. Odin pressed against Harlan's leg, a silent reminder of the line between courage and recklessness. Easy, Harlan murmured, lowering his body slightly, showing no threat. I'm not here to take what's yours. The lion's good eye fixed on him, calculating ancient. It took one step forward, paused, silent against the earth, its muscles rippling beneath the scarred hide. Harlan knew that if the beast wanted him dead, he wouldn't even have time to raise his weapon. But something about the moment felt wrong. The lion wasn't advancing to kill. It was warning him to understand. The pup suddenly barked a sharp, defiant sound that split the stillness. No Harlan hissed, but the small creature darted from the brush, sprinting straight toward the lion. Odin lunged as if to block it, but stopped short when Harlan raised a hand. The lion's head snapped toward the sound, lips peeling back to reveal enormous teeth, yet it didn't move. The pup skidded to a halt mere feet away, crouched low, tail wagging, once trembling, but unbroken. Harlan held his breath. For a heartbeat that stretched into eternity, neither moved. Then impossibly, the lion blinked slowly and let out a deep exhale that sounded almost like relief. It lowered its massive head, and the pup took a hesitant step forward, sniffing at the air, then barked once softly like a question. The lion's rumble changed pitch, less of a threat, now more of a weary groan. Harlan's mind spun. He had seen animal communication before, instinctual exchanges of trust or warning, but this felt like something more deliberate. It was recognition. "How do you two know each other?" he muttered, voice barely audible. He took a cautious step forward. The lion didn't react, only turned its gaze back to the body it guarded. That was when Harlan saw the truth. The form on the ground wasn't human. It was a lioness. Her side rose and fell shallowly, each breath ragged, one hind leg twisted beneath her. The earth beneath her was dark with blood. Harlan's stomach dropped. The tranquilizer darts the drag, marks the trail they all converged here. Someone had shot her, probably during transport or capture, and she'd collapsed here while the male stayed behind to protect her. But if that were true, where had the shooter gone? The dart he'd found earlier might have been fired by whoever tried to save or restrain her. The puzzle only deepened, but the look in the lion's eyes left no doubt about his current purpose. He was not letting anyone near her without proof of intent. The pup barked again, this time turning toward Harlan and wagging its tail before running in a tight circle near the lioness's head, whining softly. Odin growled low, uncertain, his instincts clashing between loyalty to his master and confusion at this surreal peace. The lion's gaze followed the pup, then lifted to Harlan again. For the first time, Harlan saw it something beyond animal calculation. A plea. The kind of look that bridges worlds between creatures who have shared loss. Harlan's throat tightened. He took another slow step forward, hands raised. "I'm not here to hurt her," he said quietly. "I can help." The lion shifted massive shoulders, tightening, and let out a low, rumbling moan that almost sounded human in its depth. The pup moved closer, nuzzling against the lion's front paw, pressing its small head into the thick fur as though comforting it. Harlan exhaled shakily. "You've got to be kidding me," he whispered. Odin barked once, short and sharp, his voice not of challenge, but of acknowledgement. Harlan glanced down at his dog and saw something he hadn't seen in years: acceptance. Odin's tail gave one uncertain flick before he lowered his body, lying flat in submission toward the great cat. That broke the last thread of hesitation inside Harlan. He moved forward, stopping only a few feet from the lion. The smell of musk and blood filled his lungs. The lion's golden eye followed him every inch, but it did not attack. Harlan crouched beside the fallen lioness, scanning her wounds. A tranquilizer puncture near her shoulder, a gash across her ribs, and a crushed foreleg pinned under a heavy branch. "You've been fighting to protect her," he murmured, glancing at the male. "And she's still alive because you didn't give up." The lion blinked once, slow and deliberate. It was almost enough to make him forget how close death hovered. The pup pawed at the ground beside the lioness, barking twice, its voice high with worry. "All right," Harlan said softly, touching the dirt. "Let's get her out." He turned to Odin. "Stay back until I say." The old shepherd whined but obeyed. The male lion let out a deep growl, not of anger this time, but warning. He understood Harlan's intent, yet demanded care. "I will," Harlan said, as if speaking to a man. He reached for a nearby branch thick enough to use as leverage. The lion watched him but didn't move. The bond of understanding, fragile and impossible, had been formed. The branch pressed deep into the earth, its bark digging into Harlan's palms as he heaved against it, every muscle in his arms trembling under the weight. The lioness's labored breaths came faster now, her eyes rolling white as pain coursed through her body. The massive male hovered just feet away, rumbling low, his tail swishing back and forth, a storm contained behind those amber eyes. Odin stood beside Harlan. His fur bristled, his throat vibrating with low warning sounds that never turned into barks. The pup stayed near the lioness's paw, licking at her fur as though the act alone could undo what man and nature had conspired to break. Harlan pushed harder, grunting, but the makeshift lever groaned without budging the branch. "Damn it," he hissed through his teeth, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his sleeve. He crouched closer to the lioness, studying the wound. That's when he saw it metal. A faint glint under the matted fur near her ribs, half buried in dried blood and mud. He reached, carefully ignoring the lion's deep warning growl. His fingers brushed against cold steel, a jagged piece of a snare trap, the kind poachers use to cripple large prey. His stomach clenched. No, this wasn't the storm," he muttered. "Someone did this." The trap had been set deliberately anchored to a buried spike still half wedged in the soil. The rain must have loosened the ground, just enough for the branch to fall when she struggled to pull free. It wasn't just an accident, it was an ambush gone wrong. He looked up at the lion. "You tried to get her out, didn't you?" The beast's nostrils flared, his breathing harsh, but he stayed where he was. Eyes locked on the ranger, as if understanding the accusation wasn't directed at him, but at something larger, something crueler. Harlan exhaled slowly, forcing his pulse to steady. "We're gonna fix this," he said softly. He drew the small survival knife from his belt and began cutting around the exposed wire, the blade biting through layers of mud and flesh. The lioness jerked weakly, a strained growl escaping her throat. "Easy, girl," he whispered. "I know it hurts." The male shifted, letting out a thunderous snarl, and Odin growled back, but stayed grounded, his loyalty anchoring Harlan to reason. He cut through the snare until it finally snapped loose. When he pulled it free, he noticed an engraved serial number barely visible under the grime. He rubbed it clean with his thumb and froze. It wasn't a poacher's crude device. It was military grade. The mark belonged to the Wildlife Defense Initiative, a government project meant to monitor predator movement across borders, a project that had been decommissioned years ago after a scandal involving misused tranquilizer data. And it was the same project connected to Unit 14, his old team. His blood turned cold. "This is ours," he whispered in disbelief, or it was. The lioness stirred, letting out a soft moan as her breathing shallowed. Harlan knelt lower, pressing his ear near her chest. "Still there," he muttered. "We can save her." But questions gnawed at the back of his mind. Who had set this? Was someone reviving the old tracking programs under a different name? And why here, so deep inside a protected reserve? He looked around, scanning the ground again, and something caught his eye near the fallen log, a faint metallic shimmer beneath a layer of leaves. He reached out and pulled it free. It was a tranquilizer casing identical to the one he'd found earlier, but newer. He turned it in his hand and spotted the faint manufacturer's stamp, U-14A. His breath caught. "No," he said under his breath, "that can't be right." The sound of the lion's growl deepened, echoing through the clearing like thunder rumbling in a storm's throat. Harlan slipped the casing into his pocket, feeling its weight as if it were a confession. Odin moved closer, ears flat, eyes darting between the lion and the tree line. The pup barked once sharp and urgent before pawing at the lioness again. Harlan refocused. The female's breathing had slowed dangerously. He dropped the broken snare, wedged the branch under the fallen limb again, and pressed his shoulder into it. "All right, big guy," he said to the lion through gritted teeth. "You want her free? Help me." The words were half command, half plea. The lion stared at him unblinking, then gave a single rumbling exhale. Slowly it moved closer, its massive paws sinking into the damp soil. Harlan's heart pounded in his throat. One wrong move and this would be over in seconds. But the lion didn't lunge. It crouched low, pressing its huge shoulder against the other end of the branch. "Yeah," Harlan muttered, eyes locked on the lever like that. "Together now." He grunted and pushed with all his strength. The lion did the same, muscles, rippling claws, digging deep for traction. The log groaned, shifted, lifted an inch, then another. The lioness whimpered, her tail twitching weakly. Come on," Harlan urged, voice hoarse. The log moved another half inch, then slammed back down, shaking the ground. Again he shouted. The lion roared, the sound rolling over him like wind through stone, and together they heaved. The branch cracked, but held long enough for Harlan to wedge a rock beneath the limb, keeping the pressure lifted just enough for the lioness to pull her mangled leg free. She collapsed instantly, chest rising in ragged gasps. The pup yipped, licking her face, circling in frantic relief. Harlan fell back onto his knees, panting hard. "She's out," he whispered. The lion straightened, watching him, his great chest expanding and contracting. Harlan caught his gaze. For the first time, the beast's eyes no longer carried threat. They held something else, recognition. Maybe gratitude, though such words felt too small for what passed between them. Odin approached cautious, his gray muzzle brushing Harlan's hand. The old dog's eyes flicked toward the horizon, then back to him, as if to say we're not done yet. And he was right. Harlan looked back at the broken snare and the scattered tranquilizer shells. "Whoever did this is still close," he said softly. The pup barked twice, then faced the forest again, hackles rising. The lion gave a low growl, tail-stiff body turning toward the same direction. For a fleeting second, predator-prey and man shared one awareness, a sense of something unseen watching from the shadows beyond the clearing. Harlan reached for his radio again, turning the knob slowly. The silence that followed the drone's faint hum was heavy and electric, filled with a sense that the forest itself was listening. Harlan Pierce wiped the mud and blood from his hands and looked between the lion and his wounded mate. The female's chest rose unevenly, her breath shallow and harsh, but her eyes still flickered with life. The pup whimpered beside her, licking her muzzle, refusing to step back. Odin circled once, keeping his distance from the lions, but always positioning himself between Harlan and the unseen threat in the trees. The air was thick with tension, not of conflict, but of recognition. Harlan crouched, placing one hand gently on the lioness's flank. Her skin twitched beneath his touch, but she didn't recoil. "You're gonna be all right," he said softly, not sure who he was trying to convince her or himself. The massive male stepped closer, his shadow falling over them both. Every instinct in Harlan screamed to retreat, yet something deeper rooted him in place. The lion's head lowered until its breath brushed his shoulder, hot and heavy with the wild's raw power. For a brief moment, the ranger and the predator shared the same rhythm of breath. Then slowly, deliberately, the lion extended one paw forward, claws retracted, pressing it into the earth beside Harlan's hand. At the same instant, the lioness shifted weakly, her paw sliding across the dirt until it rested against his boot. The alignment was perfect, three species linked by one unspoken understanding. Harlan swallowed hard, heart hammering as realization settled in. This wasn't submission, it was trust, a pact. He nodded slightly, his voice trembling but steady. "We'll save her," he whispered. Odin let out a low rumble, breaking the trance. The old shepherd's tail flicked once, then he turned his head toward the tree line, ears twitching. "What is it, boy?" Harlan asked, but before he could move, the pup barked, suddenly spinning toward the east. A faint crack echoed from above, the sound of a branch snapping, but the canopy was still. Then came another noise, mechanical and abrupt, slicing through the quiet whir-click-whir. Harlan's head snapped up just in time to see something metallic tumble from the canopy, spinning end over end before crashing into the underbrush with a dull thud. The lion roared a deep guttural explosion that shook the clearing, while the pup yelped and darted behind Harlan. He grabbed his revolver, pivoting toward the sound. Odin lunged forward, teeth bared, and halted beside the object, a small scorched drone, its propellers twitching weakly as smoke curled from its body. "Stay back," Harlan commanded, moving closer with cautious steps. The machine was military grade, the kind used for reconnaissance, not civilian wildlife monitoring. He nudged it over with his boot. The casing was stamped with black lettering, Unit 14 Field Recall Active. His breath froze in his chest. That couldn't be right. Unit 14 was terminated years ago. He reached down and brushed off the dirt, revealing the old insignia, an eagle's wing crossed with a tranquilizer dart. Beneath it was a small red light blinking steadily. The drone was still transmitting. "They're watching," he muttered more to himself than anyone else. He yanked the memory module from its side and crushed it under his boot until the light went dark. Odin barked once, short and sharp, as if approving the action. "So it's true," Harlan whispered. "They never shut it down." The lion's roar had turned into a restless pacing, circling the wounded female. The pup mirrored him, moving in anxious loops. Harlan knelt again beside the lioness, pressing gently along her ribcage, checking for internal bleeding. "She's losing too much blood," he said softly. He tore a strip from his sleeve and bound it tightly around her leg, above the wound, creating a makeshift tourniquet. She let out a weak, rasping growl, but didn't resist. "We need to move her," he said to the lion, as if speaking to a partner. The great beast stopped pacing and stared at him. Harlan pointed toward the direction of the ranger outpost beyond the ridge. Shelter, water, medicine. He gestured again, but the lion didn't move. The animal's gaze slid past him to the sky, where faint flashes of light still flickered between the trees. More drones hovering high and scanning. The lion turned back toward him and let out a deep rumble halfway between a growl and a sigh, then dipped its head toward the lioness, as though granting permission. "All right then," Harlan said. He slid both arms beneath the lioness's torso, feeling the strain in every tendon as he tried to lift her. She was impossibly heavy. Odin moved behind him, pushing with his head, while the pup tugged gently at the lioness's fur. The male lion moved closer and lowered his shoulder, pressing it against the lioness's side. Together, man and animals lifted. Inch by inch, they shifted her enough to drag her across the clearing toward a patch of softer ground. Harlan's muscles burned, but he didn't stop. The lion grunted beside him, its breath loud and rhythmic. When they finally set her down near a cluster of rocks, Harlan leaned back, panting hard. "That's it, girl," he said, resting a hand on her flank. Her breathing steadied slightly, still fragile but less frantic. He looked up at the lion. "You did good." The beast blinked once, slow and deliberate, then turned his gaze toward the ridge where the hum of drones had vanished. The forest was silent again, but the silence felt staged, like something holding its breath just beyond reach. Harlan checked his radio. It was dead again. He tossed it aside, wiped sweat from his brow, and stared at the crushed drone's remains. The label burned in his mind. Active. Someone had reignited a ghost of the past using technology that never should have existed anymore. "They're experimenting again," he murmured. "Same program, same code, same damn mistakes." Odin's low growl drew his attention back to the lion. The great beast was still watching him, unmoving, its golden eye reflecting a strange calm. Harlan knelt once more, meeting its gaze. "If they come for her," he said quietly, "they'll have to come through both of us." The afternoon sun burned through the canopy as the forest swayed in uneasy silence. Harlan Pierce crouched beside the lioness, feeling the tremors in her breathing vibrate through his palms. The pup whimpered softly, pacing in tight circles, while Odin stood with his body angled protectively toward the ridge. The male lion still loomed near his amber eye, trained on Harlan, chest expanding with slow, deliberate breaths. The alliance that had formed between them hung by the fragile thread of necessity. They had moved the lioness only a few yards towards safer terrain, but Harlan could already see the toll it was taking. Every time they shifted her weight, she moaned a sound that pierced him more than any threat could. He tied another bandage around her leg, pulling tight to slow the bleeding, but the cloth darkened almost instantly. "We need to get you higher," he murmured. "Rain's coming." The lion let out a rumble that sounded almost like an answer. Odin barked twice, sharp and low. Harlan lifted his head. The old shepherd's gaze was fixed upward, scanning the gaps in the canopy. "What is it?" Harlan whispered, but he already knew the tone. Odin had sensed movement. The forest air shifted heavy and unnatural. Then a faint whine sliced through the quiet, a mechanical tone so high it hurt the ears. The lion's mane rippled as his ears twitched, and the pup flattened itself against the ground. Harlan scanned the treetops, eyes narrowing. There, flickering in the shafts of sunlight, came small bursts of reflection metal glinting like lightning trapped in the leaves. He raised his revolver instinctively. "They're here," he breathed. The first dart hit the dirt inches from his boot, hissing as the tranquilizer misted into the air. A second dart embedded itself in the trunk beside the lion's shoulder. The great beast roared, spinning toward the direction of the attack. "Down," Harlan shouted, pressing himself flat against the lioness as another dart whistled past. Odin lunged forward, barking furiously, snapping at the sky. Harlan's pulse pounded. The shots weren't coming from the ground, they were from above. He caught sight of it, then a small, sleek drone hovering between the trees, barely larger than a hawk, but armed with tranquilizer pods. Its black casing gleamed with the same Unit 14 field recall markings he'd seen before. The betrayal hit him like a hammer. They were trying to recapture what they'd created. "You bastards!" He growled and fired. The first bullet went wide, clipping a branch. The drone jerked, releasing another dart that whizzed past the lion's ear. He adjusted his aim, exhaled, and fired again. The revolver cracked, echoing across the clearing. This time, the bullet found its mark. The drone spun wildly, sparks spraying like fireflies before it plunged into the underbrush with a sharp hiss and a puff of smoke. For a heartbeat, the forest fell silent. Then the lioness let out a long, broken cry, her body convulsing. Harlan dropped beside her, heart hammering. Blood seeped through her new bandage faster than before, pooling dark beneath her. "No, no, no, stay with me," he murmured, pressing both hands to the wound. The lion crouched close, nostrils flaring as he nudged her head gently. The pup whimpered, pawing at her face. Harlan looked up at the lion, meeting its wild, human-like stare. "She's bleeding out," he said. "We need to stop it." The lion gave a guttural moan that seemed to echo the grief in Harlan's own chest. He tore open his field kit, grabbing the coagulant foam and pressing it into the wound. The substance hissed as it expanded, sealing the worst of the bleeding. "That's it," he whispered. "Hold on, girl." He stayed like that for a long moment, the sounds of the forest creeping back and distant birds, the rustle of wind, the steady hum of his own heart. Then, faint but unmistakable, came the rumble of engines from the north. Not vehicles, helicopters. Harlan's blood ran cold. "They're not done." He stood peering through the trees. The lion turned muscles taut. Odin barked again, sharp warning. The pup pressed against the lioness's side, trembling. Harlan's mind raced. If they were bringing in choppers, this wasn't just about tranquilizing animals. They were retrieving data, wiping tracks, maybe even eliminating witnesses. "They'll kill us all to keep this quiet," he muttered. He turned to the lion. "We can't stay here. We move now." The lion snarled, teeth flashing, but nodded him at the sky. The sound that followed was unlike anything Harlan had ever heard from an animal. It was fury and grief woven together, a battle cry born from loss. The pup joined in, barking high and defiant. Odin growled low, the deep note of solidarity. Harlan tightened his grip on the revolver and nodded. "All right then, let's move." Together they lifted the lioness once more, her weight shared between them. The lion pushing from one side, Harlan pulling from the other, Odin and the pup circling defensively. The climb toward higher ground was brutal, every step carved from willpower and desperation. Twice they stumbled. Once Harlan nearly dropped his hold as his arm screamed in pain. The lion roared again, forcing renewed strength into the moment. They reached the base of a narrow ridge shaded by overhanging rock. It wasn't perfect cover, but it would have to do. They laid the lioness down gently. Harlan dropped beside her chest, heaving sweat and blood streaking his face. The helicopter's sound grew louder, chopping the air like blades slicing the earth apart. Dust rained down from the treetops. He looked at the lion. "If they find us, it's over." The beast met his gaze, then did something that made Harlan's throat tighten. It stepped forward and placed its paw on his arm, pressing down gently, almost as if to say, "We fight together." The simple act broke whatever barrier had remained between them. He nodded, a single tear cutting through the grime on his cheek. "Then we fight," he whispered. The helicopters came into view through the canopy, black silhouettes against the burning sky. Spotlights cut through the branches' beams, sweeping across the ground. The lioness stirred weakly, her breathing still ragged but alive. Harlan raised his revolver, ready, knowing it would be useless against what was coming. And yet something deep within told him that survival had already shifted beyond bullets. The forest, the animals, even the air itself seemed to move around them, aligned with a single purpose: to endure. The first beam of light passed over his face, blinding him. The fire from the downed helicopter spread slowly through the undergrowth, a crawling orange glow licking at the tree trunks, while smoke climbed into the bruised afternoon sky. The acrid stench of burning metal mixed with the earthy scent of blood and rain-soaked soil. Harlan Pierce crouched beside the lioness, under the shelter of the ridge, his shirt soaked through with sweat, his revolver still hot in his hand. The lion stood at the mouth of the makeshift den, watching the sky where the other choppers had vanished, his amber eyes reflecting firelight like molten gold. Odin paced restlessly, his nails scraping the stone, while the pup whimpered softly beside the injured lioness. The world had gone silent again, except for the distant crackle of the flames and the occasional groan of twisted machinery. Harlan's muscles trembled with exhaustion, but he didn't dare rest. He scanned the tree line, waiting for the inevitable sound of boots or rotor blades returning, but none came. What came instead was something far quieter. a faint wet cough from somewhere beyond the smoke. He stiffened. Odin's head snapped toward the sound. The lion rumbled low and his chest teeth bared. Harlan rose slowly, weapon ready, and moved toward the edge of the clearing. Through the smoke half buried beneath a tangle of vines and wreckage, he saw a figure, a man uniform, torn and bloodied, crawling weakly toward him. "Stop," Harlan said sharply. The man froze, raising one trembling hand. His other arm hung useless, twisted at an unnatural angle. Harlan stepped closer, kicking aside the debris. The pilot's face was smeared with soot and blood, but his chest plate gleamed with a familiar insignia. Unit 14 Field OPS. Harlan's stomach turned to ice. "You gotta be kidding me," he muttered. The pilot's lips moved, struggling to form words. "Pierce," he rasped, voice broken. "You're not supposed to be here." The lion growled behind him, pacing forward, mane bristling. The pilot's eyes widened in terror at the sight of the beast. "Easy," Harlan said, keeping his gun lowered but ready. "Tell me who sent you." The man coughed, blood bubbling from his lips. "Same people who sent you." The words hit Harlan like a punch. "What the hell are you talking about?" The pilot tried to reach for something at his belt. Odin lunged forward, barking, and the lion let out a thunderous roar that shook the ground. The pilot froze, eyes rolling in panic. "Please," he gasped. "Don't shoot. They'll hear if they're still tracking." Harlan crouched beside him, ignoring the instinct to recoil from the smell of fuel and blood. "You attacked the sanctuary zone with armed drones. You tell me who gave that order." The man coughed again, voice fading. "It wasn't recovery. It was containment." His gaze flicked toward the lioness behind Harlan. "She's one of them, one of what Harlan demanded." The pilot's pupils dilated, unfocused. "Carriers," he whispered. "Genetic data, neural mapping. Unit 14 never ended Pierce. They just rewired it. You were part of it." Harlan's hand went cold around the revolver. "You're lying." The pilot's head shook weakly. "You don't remember because they made sure you wouldn't." The lion stepped closer, the ground vibrating beneath each step. His mane flickered in the firelight, his teeth bared. Harlan moved between them. "Stay back," he said, voice sharp but controlled. The lion's eyes burned with primal fury, yet there was something else behind it, a deep confusion, almost pain, as if the sound of Harlan's name had triggered something in the animal too. Pierce, the pilot, whispered again, eyes drifting toward the lion. The bond protocol worked. It worked too well. "You were supposed to terminate the link after the first field trial." What link? Harlan's voice was barely a whisper. The man smiled weakly, a grim parody of satisfaction. "Between you and them." The lion roared suddenly, the sound so violent it seemed to tear through the forest. Harlan spun, shouting no, but the beast was already moving. In one massive bound, it closed the distance. The pilot screamed, raising his arm in a feeble attempt to shield himself. The lion's paw came down with enough force to shake the ground, stopping inches from the man's face. The claws were unsheathed, but didn't strike. The lion hovered there, trembling muscles quivering as though fighting some unseen restraint. Harlan watched in stunned silence. The lion's breath came in heaving bursts, its eyes wide with something that looked like recognition. The pilot was crying now, babbling nonsense between gasps. "It knows, it remembers. We thought, we wiped." The words broke into coughing. The lion turned its head slightly toward Harlan, letting out a low, guttural sound, not anger, not threat. It was something close to grief. Harlan stepped forward, slowly lowering his gun. "You remember me too, don't you?" he said softly. The lion blinked a tear of reflection, catching in the firelight, then turned back toward the lioness, as if unable to face him. The pilot tried to speak again, voice fading into a whisper. "They'll come back. You need to destroy the data. It's in her, the female. It's all in her." His hand twitched towards his chest pocket. Harlan reached for it, pulling free a small black box no larger than a lighter. Stamped on its side were the words Unit 14 Primary Core Log. The screen flickered weakly, displaying strings of data before going dark. "What is this?" Harlan asked. But the pilot didn't answer. His eyes had gone still fixed on the canopy above where the smoke turned the sky into a shifting blur of orange and gray. The lion stepped back, the tension in his body draining away. The only sound left was the crackle of fire and the rhythmic rasp of the lioness's breathing. Harlan stared at the black box in his hand, a chill crawling up his spine. "They used her," he whispered. "They used all of us." Odin pressed his muzzle against Harlan's shoulder, whining softly, sensing his master's unease. The pup crawled close to the lioness, resting its small head on her side. For the first time since dawn, the male lion lowered himself to the ground, sitting in solemn stillness beside Harlan. Two survivors of the same experiment, different species bound by a shared wound. The realization hit him hard. The empathy, the loyalty, the impossible understanding between them. It wasn't coincidence. It was designed. Harlan clenched the box in his fist until his knuckles went white. He wanted to crush it to erase everything it represented, but he couldn't. It might be the only proof that what happened here wasn't madness. "They'll come back for this," he said quietly. The smoke had thinned by dusk, settling into the distant horizon like a dying storm, but the air around the ridge still tasted of ash and iron. Harlan Pierce sat beside the wounded lioness, the small black box resting on his lap, its surface cold and smooth like a piece of obsidian. The firelight flickered against the strange emblem of Unit 14 carved into its side. The male lion lay a few feet away, his massive body still, but his eye never leaving Harlan. Odin paced slowly near the ridge, ears twitching at every sound from the forest below, while the pup pressed close to the lioness's chest, small body trembling with exhaustion. The silence stretched long enough to feel eternal. Harlan wiped the grime from his face and stared down at the box again. The pilot's words echoed in his head. "It's in her. It's all in her." He didn't know what that meant, but the lioness's pulse was weakening, and if this device truly held data from the old Unit 14 experiments, maybe it also held the key to saving her. "You said you wanted me to finish what I started," he muttered to himself. "Let's see what you built me for." He flipped open the small panel on the side. A dim blue light blinked to life, illuminating his face. The screen glowed faintly with unreadable data strings of genetic markers and coordinates flashing across the interface. It wasn't a tracker. It was a code biological encryption. Harlan frowned. "Neural sync module," he whispered. The term unlocked something deep within him, a word he hadn't spoken in years. The male lion growled softly, sensing his tension. "Easy," Harlan said quietly. "I am trying to help her." He placed the box near the lioness's head. The device emitted a faint hum that vibrated through the soil. The lioness's eyelids fluttered. The pup barked once startled, but didn't move. Harlan's hand trembled as he adjusted the dial aligning the pulse frequency. He didn't know how he remembered the settings. His body simply acted before his mind could process the memory. The hum deepened, resonating in a low rhythm that synced with the lioness's heartbeat. Then the light changed from blue to green. A sudden shock coursed through Harlan's body, his vision blurring for an instant. He gasped, clutching at his temples. The world around him dissolved into sound and motion. For a brief, disorienting second, he wasn't in the forest anymore. He was in a sterile white lab, the hum of machines filling his ears, and through the glass he saw cages, dozens of them, housing lions, wolves, and hybrid pups with luminous eyes. He saw himself in a lab coat, Younger standing beside two massive lions restrained by steel harnesses. The male roared, straining against his bindings, while the female's eyes were locked on him, not with hatred, but trust. His own voice echoed faintly through the memory, initiating empathy synchronization protocol subject pair designation, Alpha and Kira. Then the memory shattered. Harlan jerked back into the present, gasping for air. The lioness stirred beneath his hand, letting out a deep, shuddering exhale. Her breathing steadied slightly, the faint tremor in her chest easing. Odin barked once in alarm, and the lion rose, stepping close, his face inches from Harlan's. "It worked," Harlan whispered. "She's stabilizing." The lion's gaze flicked from Harlan to the device, then back, as if recognizing the sound it emitted. The pup whimpered softly, pressing its tiny head against the lioness's paw. Harlan swallowed hard, his pulse hammering. The connection hadn't just revived her, it had opened something inside him. Images still flickered behind his eyes. The lab, the protocols, the names. Alpha, Kira. They weren't random designations. They were the lions before him. And then there was the third one. The small one in the corner of the vision, standing on trembling legs, looking up at him. The pup. "You were there too," he said softly, staring at the little dog, now watching him with those impossibly intelligent eyes. "You were made to find me." The realization burned through him like wildfire. The pup barked once, tail wagging uncertainly. The lioness let out a weak rumble, her eyes flickering open for the first time since morning. She looked straight at Harlan, unblinking, and for one impossible second, he felt everything she did, pain, confusion, and something deeper that defied words: recognition. The neural link still pulsed faintly through the box. He felt the lion's breath behind him warm against his neck, and realized the connection had spread to him as well. His thoughts blurred into sensations: rage, sorrow, loyalty, all woven together into a single current. The lions weren't just animals in this moment. They were mirrors of everything he'd buried inside himself since Unit 14 collapsed. He stumbled back, hand pressed to his head. "God," he gasped. "What did we do?" The lion stepped closer, pressing its forehead gently against his shoulder. The contact sent another surge through his nerves, this one softer, steadier. He saw flashes of the male's memories, now chains, flashing lights, the sound of his own voice giving commands from behind glass. And then freedom. The crash, the escape, the years of wandering until the scent of a familiar human drew them back across miles of savannah. They had been searching for him all along. The lioness blinked her gaze, softening the bond, stretching taut between them like a living thread. "You came back for me," he said hoarsely. "All this time." The lion rumbled low, pressing closer. Odin barked again, circling them, unsure what to make of the strange communion between species. Harlan reached for the box, switching the dial to standby. The hum faded, but the connection didn't vanish entirely. He could still feel their presence lingering at the edge of his mind, 3 separate heartbeats aligned with his own. He took a shaky breath and looked toward the horizon where thunderclouds were gathering. "They know I have this now," he said quietly, "and they'll come for all of us." The lion raised its head, ears twitching at the distant sound of engines once again approaching. The pup growled, a strange high-pitched noise that carried defiance. Harlan holstered his revolver, though he knew bullets wouldn't stop what was coming. "Then we fight smarter this time," he said. He turned to the lioness, who was slowly rising onto her unsteady paws, her eyes locked on him with renewed strength. "You're not dying here. Not again." The lion stepped beside her, their bodies brushing. The sky over Kinjaro split open before dawn, thunder rolling across the horizon like the echo of war drums. The scent of rain and diesel hung thick in the air, and the hum of engines grew louder with every passing minute. Harlan Pierce stood at the edge of the ridge. His coat soaked his revolver, holstered the small black box clenched in his hand. Behind him, the lion and lioness stood side by side, the pup pressed close between their legs, and Odin crouched low at his heel teeth, bared toward the tree line where the faint shimmer of headlights flickered through the mist. Harlan had spent the night listening to the whir of drones circling in the dark, to the distant murmur of radio chatter echoing through his mind like ghosts. The truth had settled on him like the coming rain. He was no longer running from Unit 14. He was standing in the middle of it, the last survivor of an experiment that had blurred the boundary between species empathy and control. The lions had found him not by fate, but by design. And now, in the most twisted irony imaginable, it was his turn to save them from the people who made them both. He crouched beside the lioness, who was steady on her paws now, but still limping. Her eyes met his, gold-flecked with green, full of awareness no animal should ever carry, yet there was no fear in them, only trust. "When they come, you run," he said softly. The lion rumbled low, as if refusing the order. "No," Harlan said, shaking his head. "This isn't your fight. You've done enough." The lion growled again, deeper this time, and Odin barked sharply, echoing the defiance. Harlan smiled faintly. "Yeah, I didn't think you'd listen." A burst of gunfire cut through the dawn. Bullets tore through the trees, splintering bark. The lions flinched, snarling, while Harlan rolled for cover behind a fallen trunk. "They found us," he shouted. Even though the words were pointless, the others already knew. The air erupted with chaos. Drones screamed overhead, spotlights slicing through the fog. Men in black tactical suits fanned out through the underbrush. Rifles raised their visors, glowing red in the half-light. Pierce, one of them, shouted through a speaker, "Stand down, you're in violation of a containment protocol." Harlan ducked as another round of gunfire struck the dirt beside him. He looked down at the black box glowing faintly in his hand. The screen pulsed red now, not green. The signal was active again. They were using it to track him, and worse, to control the lions. He felt it in the way the male stiffened his breath, hitching as if an invisible leash had tightened around his mind. The lioness growled in confusion, stumbling as static-like pulses rippled through the air. The pup yelped, pressing against the ground. "No," Harlan whispered, realizing the signal wasn't just data, it was command. "They're trying to turn you against me." He scrambled behind a rock, flipped open the box, and stared at the interface flashing with rapidly shifting coordinates. There was only one way to end it. "Harlan Pierce," the voice boomed again, closer now. "Surrender the biosignal device and step away from the specimens. You don't understand what you're carrying. I understand more than you ever did." Harlan muttered, fingers flying across the interface. He could feel the code humming through the box, a faint echo of his own heartbeat pulsing back at him. Odin barked, snapping him out of the trance as a bullet whizzed past his shoulder. "Almost there," Harlan hissed. He rerouted the data pathways, accessing the encryption route he'd seen during the neural sync. The lion's growls grew louder, overlapping with the low whine of the drones, both species trembling under the same unseen frequency. "Override," he said, voice shaking. "Execute full release." The screen blinked, warning red process, irreversible core data wipe will result in neural decoherence. He exhaled a bitter laugh, escaping his lips. "Yeah, that's the point." He slammed his thumb on the confirmation pad. The box emitted a high-pitched tone, then cracked open with a flash of light. The shockwave knocked him backward, dust and static filling the air. Odin yelped and the lions roared in unison, the sound shaking the trees. The soldiers stumbled, their visors flickering as every device within range went dead. Then silence. For one suspended moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The lions stood still, their eyes wide and free. Whatever tether had bound them was gone. Harlan tried to stand but stumbled to his knees, the world spinning. The box lay in the dirt beside him, its casing cracked open, the light fading. He felt a strange emptiness in his mind, like the echo of a door closing forever. The neural link was gone too. His memories of the lab, of the codes, of the voices, they were dissolving into mist. He smiled faintly. "Guess that's fair," he whispered. A shadow moved through the smoke. One of the soldiers had broken from the tree line, rifle raised. Harlan barely had time to react before the lion did. The beast exploded forward in a blur of muscle and fury, slamming into the man before the shot fired. The impact sent both crashing to the ground. The soldier screamed once before the sound was swallowed by the storm's roar. Harlan tried to call the lion back, but his voice failed. The lion turned, muzzle streaked with blood, eyes no longer wild but calm, anchored in something deeper. Understanding. It walked back to him, slowly lowering its head until it was level with his, Rain began to fall heavy and warm, washing the ash from the earth. The lioness moved beside her mate, the pup between them, and Odin leaned into Harlan's side, whining softly. "It's done," Harlan said. "You're free now." The lion blinked once, then nuzzled his shoulder gently before stepping back. Harlan reached up his fingers, brushing through the damp fur. "You don't owe me anything." The lion gave a low rumble that sounded almost like denial, then turned toward the open savanna, where the stormlight stretched like a silver horizon. The lioness followed, limping but strong, the pup bounding beside her. They paused once at the edge of the clearing, looking back at him through the rain. Harlan felt something shift inside his chest, a quiet peace that wasn't victory, but release. He whispered, "Go home." The lions turned and vanished into the grass, their forms swallowed by the curtain of rain. Odin barked once, as if saying goodbye, then sat beside his master as the sound of engines faded into nothing. Harlan looked down at the shattered black box. It lay silent, the emblem of Unit 14 half buried in the mud. He picked it up and turned it over in his hand before hurling it into the river below. The current seized it instantly, carrying the ghost of the past into the endless dark. Lightning flashed, illuminating the empty ridge. The storm broke open completely, rain pounding the earth, washing away every trace of blood and fire. Harlan stood in the downpour, head tilted back, letting the water cleanse the dirt from his skin. His mind was blank, free of control, free of memory, free of the weight that had once defined him. For the first time in years, he was just a man again, no program, no mission, no leash. He turned toward Odin, who wagged his tail, weakly eyes shining with that ancient, wordless loyalty. "Come on, boy," Harlan said softly, voice barely audible under the rain. "Let's go see what's left of the world." Together they walked down the ridge, leaving the clearing behind. Far ahead, the storm opened into dawn, the first light piercing through the clouds. And for one fleeting moment before the horizon swallowed them, a faint roar echoed back through the valley, not of rage, but of freedom. The end. If this story moved, you don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more stories that remind us what loyalty and freedom truly mean. Tell me in the comments what part of Harlan's journey hit you hardest, and where in the world are you watching from right now?